Good morning and good afternoon and evening. My name is Aurélien Laurent, with my colleague Miss Urbanova and as well Miss Donsetich. We'll be hosting this match between two teams, the University of Melbourne and Prince Sultan University. I give the floor to my colleague.
Thank you and welcome to both teams, and also welcome to the viewers, and most heartfelt welcome also to the three judges that will be evaluating this match. The teams today will be have prepared for the topic Global Approach to Cybersecurity Compromises Individual Privacy in Name of National and International Security. They've prepared for both sides of the argument, but will debate only on one after the allocation of position. Before that, time to learn a bit more about the speakers today, starting with University of Melbourne, Mr. Surtas.
Hello, my name is Alexander Siorthis. I'm a law student in my final year at Melbourne University.
Thank you and welcome. From Prince Sultan University, Ms. Sahab.
Hello, my name is Judy Sahab. I'm in my third year at my university in the capital of Saudi Arabia, Riyadh.
Thank you and welcome. From University of Melbourne, Mr. Calvert.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name's Oscar Calvert, and I'm representing the University of Melbourne.
Thank you and welcome. For Prince Sultan University, second member, Ms. Hashim.
Hello, my name is Lynn Hashim, and I'm a second-year student at Prince Sultan University in Riyadh. You are muted.
Thank you very much. I was saying thank you and welcome again. So for today's match, Ms. Donsetich, who is a student organizer of the competition, will be your host for the debate, and also will be providing you visual cues, so 30 seconds in yellow card and red card for when your time is up. And without further ado, to discover which are your positions for the debate. If you can just give me a confirmation, you can see the screen.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, I can.
So for today's debate, it will be Prince Sultan University debate team that will be defending position against. Therefore, it will be the University of Melbourne's team that will argue that global approach to cybersecurity compromises individual privacy in the name of national and international security. And the Prince Sultan University will argue against this motion. You now have 5 minutes to finalize your preparation. Feel free to close your cameras. Thank you very much. The time for preparation is now over. I will be passing the floor to Ms. Stančić, who will be your host for the session.
The time for preparation is done, and we're going to start with a debate. University of Melbourne, you have now 4 minutes for your opening statement. Time will start whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much. Well, my name is Alexander Sultan, and I'll be the first speaker for the team from University of Melbourne. And my partner, Oscar Calvert, will speak secondly. So I'll speak first for the first 4 minutes and then for 2. And my partner will speak for 2 and then 2 and conclude our arguments. So the motion for today is that the global approach to cybersecurity compromises individual privacy in the name of national and international security. And we are in favour of this motion. And quite honestly, we don't envy the opposing team for having to oppose this motion because it is more of a statement of fact than a question. It is true that the global approach to cybersecurity compromises individual privacy in the name of national and international security for the very simple reason that everything is now online. So from shopping to banking to significant transactions to the storage of important data, everything in this day and age is connected to the internet, and the rate of global connectivity is growing. And this needs to be protected, understandably. But there is no expectation of privacy on the internet. People, even getting into this WebEx, I had to click, do I accept an invasion of privacy? Yes, I do. And of course, there's plenty more going on behind the scenes. So there's, on the one hand, the terms and conditions, and on the other hand, there's also a more national security and international security component to that, which would be surveillance. And so it's understandable that there is this compromise of individual privacy for the sake of national or international security or for cybersecurity. That's our first point, which is that there is no real expectation of individual privacy. People take it for granted that you sacrifice that in the name of national and international security. And by way of background, there is no global harmonized, quote unquote, approach to this. There's no treaty governing this issue, and only really the ICCPR deals with, at a high level, this tension between security and freedom. But these concepts are ambiguous and are left to each jurisdiction. So moving on to our more substantive points. So the first point is that what we previously made, and my partner will elaborate on this point, that there is a chilling effect, more on the harms of the sacrifice of this individual privacy, that there is a chilling effect on compromising privacy, on free expression, and on innovation. So it's not a good thing that this is the case. The second point, which is one that I'll make, is that it violates, to an extent, national sovereignty and individual sovereignty, the power that we have over our own information, the control that we have over our own information. The third is also a point that I alluded to about how the notion of cybersecurity and international security are vague concepts. There's constructive ambiguity there, so you can read it widely or narrowly, depending on whoever's reading it and their interests. And it could be used to justify a lot of actions. And this is also something that my partner will elaborate on, and which I will elaborate on the potential for abuse. So we understand that individual privacy is sacrificed in the name of national and international security for cybersecurity, but that comes at significant costs, and we want to flag those costs and say why that is not necessarily a good thing. My partner will speak on the violation of fundamental rights, the potential for the abuse of power, the lack of accountability and transparency, and, as previously mentioned, the chilling effect. In sum, I'm done.
Thank you. In the position against Prince Sultan University, you now have 4 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you so much. My name is Judy Sahab, and I will be starting our opening speech. Fellow debaters, organizers, and of course, honorable judges, in our new and interconnected world, technology binds us in a web of data and information. And so the conversation surrounding the protection of our privacy has never been more pertinent. But before we delve into the heart of this debate, it is essential to establish some foundational terms. When we refer to a global scale, we're talking about the governing bodies that oversee these international efforts. On the other hand, when we say individual privacy concerns, we're talking about the rights of the citizens within those governing bodies. So as we gather here today to discuss the critical intersection of global cybersecurity and individual privacy, it's really important to challenge the notion that global approach to cybersecurity compromises individual privacy. While of course there are examples of breaches of individual privacy in various countries, it's crucial to recognize that these instances do not represent the global approach, nor are they the golden standard. When we consider a framework for international agreements and resolutions, such as those set forth by the UN General Assembly, it becomes evident that a global approach to cybersecurity can, in fact, coexist with the protection of individual privacy. These agreements emphasize the importance of respecting each country's autonomy in determining the cybersecurity infrastructure, so that you can ensure that each nation meets the specific needs of its citizens. Other international agreements, like the regulatory framework set forth by the General Data Protection Regulation, otherwise known as the GDPR, exemplify a global commitment to protecting individual privacy, while also addressing privacy concerns. All of these frameworks that I've just mentioned hold both privacy and protection hand in hand and promote a harmonized approach to cybersecurity on a global scale. Let's also not overlook the significant strides made in balancing the right to privacy with the right to security. One such example is the widespread adoption of data encryption as a fundamental component of cybersecurity efforts. So encryption not only enhances security by safeguarding your sensitive information, it also protects the individual's privacy by rendering their data unreadable to unauthorized parties. A global approach to cybersecurity also encourages collaboration among nations and organizations, especially when sharing threat intelligence. So this enhances the collective security without compromising individual privacy. An incredible example of this was the WannaCry ransomware attack that affected thousands of computers around May of 2017. It serves as a poignant example of the importance of international cooperation against these cyber threats. So the unprecedented level of collaboration that took place among cybersecurity organizations, government agencies, all across the world showed the effectiveness of a global outlook on cybersecurity and how it can mitigate the impact of such attacks. In conclusion, as we navigate the complex landscape of cybersecurity and privacy rights, we must recognize that a global approach can indeed uphold the principles of individual privacy while also ensuring national and international security. By embracing this collaboration and respecting national sovereignty, we can implement robust security measures and we can strive towards a future where privacy rights are safeguarded and cybersecurity is strengthened on a global scale. I leave you with this. Privacy should not be reduced to an individual interest. It is central to the formation of relationships and a healthy functioning democracy. Privacy is a collective right. Thank you.
Thank you for your submission. Now we have ended with the opening statements, and I want to ask the University of Melbourne to start with their first rebuttal as a team in favor. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Well, at risk of agreeing too much with the opening statement from the opposition, we do agree that individual privacy is a fundamental right, but we do not see that, I suppose we don't see eye to eye on the points that were raised about how that is protected. We would agree that it is a fundamental right to an extent, but it's clearly subordinate to national and international security. So I'm not sure if that point will be eventually addressed, but it's clear that individual privacy is subordinated to national and international security precisely for the point that was mentioned about collective, not necessarily collective privacy, but for collective security reasons. So one person's right to privacy would not undermine efforts to protect national security. And that's a point that we might agree upon, but that is evidence of the fact that the approach to cybersecurity compromises individual privacy, not that privacy is a right which everyone has and that is consistent with national and international security. These are concepts which are in tension with, as in they are antagonistic to one another. So you can't have simultaneously privacy safeguards and security safeguards, because security safeguards are surveillance-based and intrusive, and an example of a ransomware attack was given, but there are many instances of surveillance for protecting national security. It's important just to reiterate that everyone's connected to the Internet of Things today, and that while individual privacy exists to an extent, we understand that that is clearly subordinated to national and international security. So it's a factual point, and it's not one that we think has been proven wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. Starting with the rebuttals for the opposing team, Prince Sultan University, you now have 2 minutes for your first rebuttal.
Honorable judges and fellow debaters and audience members, the first point that the opposition neglected is the definition of what human right is. Human right is a standard and it's not binding. It is what the UN had suggested. The right to privacy is not an erga omnes right, meaning that if it was violated, that does not give a right for any other country to intervene. The UDHR, Article 12, recognized the importance of privacy as a fundamental right, yet its practical applications and effectiveness in protecting individual privacy may be various to different interpretations, technological advancements, and legal expectations. Now, take for example Australia, which has a unique Western-style liberation democracy that does not have a comprehensive set of human rights in its constitution like the US, or a legalized bill of rights like its neighbor New Zealand at the federal level. Of the rights that do receive recognition and protection in Australia, privacy and individual security are not among them, and free expression is only received in limited protection via the implied right to political communication. Another response is to the assumption that there is no global currently treaty that has been passed, yet that negates the fact that the creation of global culture and cybersecurity and the protection of the critical information infrastructure resolution was passed in 2004 by the General Assembly, as well as the cybercrime and the Budapest Convention, which is the first international treaty seeking to address internet and computer crimes by harmonizing international law that has been passed in 2001 and has been effective since 2004. Thank you.
Thank you. Second rebuttal in favor, University of Melbourne, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Well, I'd firstly like to touch upon the point that this approach would violate fundamental rights. We know that privacy is recognised as a fundamental human right by various international treaties and conventions. And unlike privacy, we know that a global approach to cybersecurity is not defined. So that clearly points out the potential for exploitation and dangerous effects on our citizens. Any compromise on individual privacy in the name of security, at the very least, should be strictly scrutinised to ensure it does not infringe upon these basic fundamental human rights that make us human. Of course, we've had to deal with the internet, but this is not an answer. A global approach to cyber security that sacrifices privacy could set a dangerous precedent, as I mentioned before, and it undermines the foundations of civil liberty and individual autonomy. This leads me to my next point concerning the potential for abuse of power. Granting governments broad brush authority to conduct surveillance and collect personal data in the name of cybersecurity raises concerns about abuse. History has shown this. History has shown that surveillance powers intended for legitimate purposes can be misused for political repression, discrimination, and social control. So, without robust checks and balances, a global approach simply can't exist, and it could pave the way for authoritarian practices, ultimately undermining democracy and individual privacy. Thank you.
Thank you. Prince Sultan University, you now have 2 minutes for your second rebuttal.
Thank you. What the proposition negates to acknowledge is the already in place sort of frameworks that are set by both the UN General Assembly and the GDPR, which is the General Data Protection Regulations set by the European Union, as well as multiple legislation and acts within individual countries that safeguard people's individual privacy. If we want to talk about a specific case that took place in 2013, Edward Snowden was an American whistleblower, and he reported the NSA for conducting alarming privacy and civil concerns. This all resulted in the USA Freedom Act that was enacted to support transparency and oversight. While we can agree that previously, historically, there has been issues regarding individual privacy and cybersecurity, nowadays we are leaps and bounds beyond where we were, and to not acknowledge that is simply neglectful. Also, I would like to mention that privacy, as I've mentioned, is a collective right that citizens earn under their government. It is not just an individual right that each person earns. That's where we kind of disagree. As mentioned by my colleague Lin Hashim, the UN's act about the UN's act about the human right of privacy is simply a suggestion, a framework, a guide. It's not a law that has been enacted. Governments have the right to protect themselves and protect their nations. Their citizens expect protection at that level. And to some extent, their privacy might be affected, but it is not necessarily infringed upon. Thank you.
Thank you. We have now finished with the rebuttals and are entering closing statements, starting with the University of Melbourne. You have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
We thank the opposition for their points. I'd like to summarise and conclude with this. Global security initiatives often operate in secrecy. They're shielded from public scrutiny under the guise of national security interests. We acknowledge that citizens have the right to be protected, but they'd also like to be protected from other countries. We know that a global approach itself, that can be exposed to cybersecurity problems. A lack of transparency and accountability, which would make this approach safer, undermines democratic oversight and prevents individuals from holding governments accountable, or external actors, for example. Without this, there's a risk that privacy violations can go unchecked, as we know with the GDPR, which has been a great framework. We know that since going into effect, regulators have struggled to act quickly against big tech firms and online advertising. And while the GDPR has been a point of progression, it hasn't stamped out problems concerning data stockpiling, data brokers, selling information, particularly with the online advertising industry. Lastly, there's clearly a chilling effect on innovation. If people believe they're being surveilled in the name of cybersecurity, this can have an impact not only on democracy, but entrepreneurialism, freedom of expression, and innovation. Individuals may self-censor out of fear, and overall, we may hesitate to develop new technologies to challenge the existing frameworks. This undermines individual freedoms, but also hampers societal progress. Thank you.
Thank you. Starting with the closing statement of the opposing team, Prince Sultan University, you now have 2 minutes.
In our interconnected world, protecting privacy amidst advancing technology is crucial. Today, we discuss global cybersecurity and individual privacy, debunking the idea that a global approach undermines privacy. International agreements like those from the UN emphasizes tailored cybersecurity measures respected to each country's autonomy. Encryption and framework like the GDPR, like my colleague mentioned, showcase global effort to balance privacy and security. Collaboration enhances collective security without compromising individual privacy, as seen in responses to, as my colleague mentioned, the WannaCry threat. A global approach respects sovereignty while safeguarding privacy and strengthening cybersecurity worldwide. Privacy isn't just individual, it is a collective right crucial for relationships and democracy. Take, for example, terrorist incidents prompted laws like the UK Investigatory Power Act, reflecting a shift in government views on citizen privacy. Once a fundamental human right, such as privacy in this case, clashes with national security, states prioritize protecting its citizens' necessity to security agencies access to tools and technologies, backed by law for intelligent gathering to prevent future threats. There are also debates about the trade-offs between security and privacy. Too much privacy may hinder the ability to secure agencies to gather required intelligences on targeted individual. I leave you with this at the end. Should governments wait for an incident to happen before they allow the security and intelligence agencies to be able to do the surveillance, the required surveillance on proposed threats? Should we wait for a global and nationwide crisis for someone to stand up just in the sake of a single individual's privacy? Thank you.
Thank you. Now, with this, I conclude our debate. You can relax. You're done. Very good job. First of all, I want to congratulate you all on your great arguments. It was really